Hello and happy Wednesday. My name is Beverly Hosford, and this is my friend and colleague Erin Nitschke. We are live on the NFPT Facebook page talking about goal setting for the new year. And how are you today, Erin?
Pretty good. I'm planning on staying inside because Mother Nature is having some sort of tantrum right now.
Tantrum.
So I'm not leaving. I can't even see the street outside of my office right now. That's like the wind is blowing and the snow is flying. I'm like, yeah, looks like I'm going to stay home. Sounds good.
That's funny. See, I, on the other hand, jumped out there right away this morning and went skiing around my neighborhood. So
good for you.
I'm definitely very different in that way. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to post this on Facebook really quick. Join us to set goals. If you know anyone that wants to set some New Year's goals, join us now. Please share this on your Facebook page and have them come over and join us. I do apologize to anybody who thought the show was tomorrow because I scheduled it on the wrong day, but we are here and we're going to talk all about setting New Year's goals, and Erin has got 5 steps for us that she is going to go over today. So as we get started here, I just want to say hello to everybody. If you are just tuning in, tell us where you are. Where in the world are you? I'm in Montana. Erin's in Wyoming. And NFPT is the National Federation of Professional Trainers, is a personal training certification and education company that's located in Indiana. So I see Billy's here with us from headquarters, and I would love to know who else is here with us. Say hello and tell us where you're from, and tell us if you have any New Year's resolutions or goals that you're working on. Just throw it up there in the comments. Do you have any that you're working on, Erin, that you want to share before we get started, or we could talk about that at the end?
I do. Yeah, we can start with that. That's fine. We've already had technical issues this morning. So I don't ever really set one particular goal. I kind of have categories of goals. And so I have a learning category, I have a business or career category, I have a family category, and then I have just relationship category. So my friends or, any relationships that I'm trying to foster, just spend more time with people. And I don't try to tackle them all at once. They're more like intentions that, okay, so for my learning goal, I want to take this class. The learning goal I have now is to finish your anatomy course, Bev. And so I'm working on that. So that's my learning goal. And then I've got my business and career goal, and I'm working on developing a nutrition course for NFPT. And for family, when it comes to that, it's more about okay, so what new things can we do together this year? As Olivia gets a little bit older, she's a little bit more intrigued by things, so there are different opportunities that crop up as she does grow and get more interested in things. So that's really about an adventure. What else can we do as a family? Whether it's, I take her to the library on a Saturday, or, we go to the park if it's nice, that kind of a thing, or we go sledding or something like that. So that's kind of how I break out my goals and my intentions. And another strategy that I use is doing it quarterly. So a year can be a long time for people. And it's one thing if, you're trying to finish a certification and it does have a 1-year timeline. But if you have a couple things that you want to accomplish, you could break it up into quarters as well. So for the first quarter of the year, I'm going to work on X. For the second quarter, I'm going to work on this. And then it makes it maybe a little bit more manageable for people. Depends on who you are.
Yeah.
So for sure.
That's great. I agree. I think a whole year is really daunting to set goals for. Yeah. But I think for some people, we're setting goals constantly throughout the year. So, but then there are some folks out there that don't really ever set goals. And some of the clients that come to see you may not be in that habit of setting goals. So the new year kind of I feel sparks that in people where they're like, all right, let's set some goals, or they're more willing. And then you can probably turn them on to this quarterly idea. Just like when we talked about taxes a couple weeks ago, most people panic at the end of the year about taxes. And if we can turn them on to paying quarterly, then they won't panic as much. So I think it's very similar in that way. Well, awesome. Yeah, I guess I don't really have a method. I every year I stumble upon something new. Last year I read Danielle Laporte's book, and she talks about setting goals based off your feelings, how you want to feel. So she says start with your feelings, write down the feelings you want to have, and then figure out what you're currently doing in your life that creates those feelings and put those things first, and then decide if there's something else you can add in that will create those feelings. So I did that last year. And then this year, yeah, I'm kind of interested to see what your method is. I like your categories method. I think that's really great, especially because we have a new little one in our house. And so family planning and family goals is important. I like the idea of doing something new with the family, like, because yeah, same with Isaac. He's definitely in a whole new place now where we could probably step outside our comfort zone a little bit. So that's awesome. Yeah, I like that. So we're going to give you guys 5 steps to set goals to follow. So Erin, what is our first step?
So the first step is related to clarifying that goal for yourself or for your clients, helping them or helping yourself identify what it is that you want to accomplish and writing it down. It's not enough to simply think in your mind, this is what I'm going to do, or to think about it on New Year's Eve during the midst of some sort of celebration or cocktail hour or whatever. And then the New Year's here and there was no planning involved. And so sometimes I think that using the new year, I think it's a great jumping off point because it does signify a new beginning. But you could also, and I think it was Billy that mentioned setting New Year's resolutions. He uses his birthday. And Billy, correct me if I'm wrong on that. Like that's the time that maybe he'll set a different intention or something new that he wants to accomplish. So it doesn't have to be New Year's. Sometimes I think it can go either way. I think you can use New Year's as a crutch and be like, oh, I'm going to change my diet when it gets to New Year's. And it's currently October, or something like that. Instead of, okay, if you have that intention and you have a goal that you want to accomplish, identify it for yourself and write it down. There's some kind of power in seeing it on paper.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Billy says you're spot on. And he's working on flexibility physically and professionally. That's nice. And John says hi from Lake George, New York. And Billy obviously is in Lafayette. So we had a few comments popping up there. Okay. That's great. So number 1 is writing it down. I'm with you. I feel like any successful person you talk to will say, write it down. And I always like at the end of each year, I like to write down what I'm proud of from the year before.
Yeah.
And I've been doing that for almost 15 years now. And it's really neat to just look back and see like what it is that I did last year. Because that always helps me think like, okay, so next year at this time, what do I want to be able to write down in this journal that I did this year? Because some of these goals do take an entire year to get to. Some goals can take an entire year, especially if you're making a major life change. So writing it down, I feel like, something about that puts it in stone. It makes it more permanent versus that passing New Year's party. Like, I promised to XYZ. So what's our second? So if you guys liked our first tip, put a 1 in the comments. Number 1, if you liked that idea of writing it down. So what's number 2, Erin?
So number 2 is connecting with your why. So identifying why this goal is important to you. There has to be some sort of rationale or motivation that you can connect with that fuels that excitement for you to pursue that goal. Because if it's inflicted on you by somebody else or some sort of outside influence, like a socially prescribed standard or something like that, it's not going to be as personally meaningful.
Right.
You're doing it to fulfill somebody else's why, somebody else's ask. So you need to decide, why is this important to me? And that's where your power is. Your power is in that decision. It's in your decision to pursue a certain goal, but more importantly, why you want to pursue that goal. So it can't just be like, I want to lose 10 pounds because I want to, look like X.
So for example, like, why do you want to finish my anatomy course this year?
So I think that's a great question. So, I took anatomy in college, but I'm, a few years out of college. And, I taught anatomy when I was a graduate student as well. And it's one of those things that I think we can always learn a little bit more about. And I think part of the reason is I enjoy learning the same subject from different people. I think every instructor has a different perspective. And I think that only then deepens your knowledge and your respect for the topic when you can learn from multiple people. And so when you can integrate that learning goal so that it, one, supports your own knowledge and development, it's good for the brain. It's good for you to learn. Like, let's ward off Alzheimer's. Let's keep the cognitive function just tip-top shape. And one way to do that is to constantly learn, be a lifelong learner. And so that's one reason is because I've never taken a class like yours set up this way. And I loved, one of the first things that drew me to it was that video that I watched of you presenting at IDEA on the Back to Basics. And you used balloons to demonstrate basically how a muscle contracts and lengthens. And I'm like, where was that when I was trying to learn this as an undergraduate student? Because it really wasn't that. So for me, it's a new approach, and it's like a renewed respect for the human body and what it can do. And it just makes you a better professional at what you do, because you understand how the body moves. You have to understand that if you're ever going to help anybody make a change.
Well, you've got a really strong why behind that. So yeah, if you ask your client why they want to do something and they look at you blankly and they're like, I don't know, then, but that was a really well thought out explanation. So, so if you like number 2, which is find your why, put a 2 in the comments. If you're into the whole finding a why, finding that deeper reason. And yeah, I think it's really important to know why. And that's where I think like Danielle Laporte's feelings idea comes in, where it's like you want to have that feeling, like maybe with education, you want to feel refreshed. Like actually, if I look back on my words from last year, one of the words on my list is refreshed. So it's like, okay, going skiing around my neighborhood in the morning can refresh me. Taking a shower can refresh me. Taking that course can refresh me. So it's like, perfect. Those are all activities that will help me feel that way. And when I feel that way, then I'll be happy, supposedly, or whatever. So so if you like number 2, finding your why, put a 2 in the comments. And then Erin, tell us what number 3 is.
So number 3 is to share it. It isn't enough to just do steps 1 and 2. I think all of us need a support system as we move forward in whatever endeavors we choose to pursue. So I think it's important to not just talk about it casually, around the water cooler, like, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to, train for a 5K or a 10K or a half marathon or whatever the case is. Share that intention, whether it's with your spouse, your best friend, a sibling, a trusted colleague, if you have one of those that you're close with, enlist their help. So when you share it, you're also asking for them to give you some sort of measure of accountability. It's hard to hold ourselves accountable. It really is. It's a challenge. And so sometimes we need that outside, well, remember your goal, or just for them to like ask you about your progress. Hey, how's your X going? How are you feeling about the goal you're pursuing, or how is that going for you? And I think in doing that, you can also have that support network that can help you overcome whatever setbacks that you might stumble upon, because you're going to.
Yeah. That's when you're having a rough day and they're like, how's the goal doing? And you're like, I gave up on it. And they're like, well, why? And then you can kind of, it's hard. I feel like just like it's hard to write it down. It's hard to tell people sometimes, because once you tell them, then they know, and then they can hold you accountable. I love what you said, like standing around the water cooler and sharing the goal casually.
Yeah, don't share it casually. Once you write it down and you connect with your why, it gets a little bit more serious and it gets a little bit more real and tangible. So I think you need to have that outside support network. And I'm not saying you need to, do an email blast or post it on the portal or, anything. Don't get crazy. Just share it with a few trusted people that you trust to not only, support you and encourage you, but to also kick you in the butt if you're getting off track.
Yeah.
Not someone that's going to be like, yeah, let's go get that, whole pizza, and, we'll each have a large pizza by ourselves, things like that. Like, don't choose the enabler.
Yeah, absolutely.
Enable ourselves easy enough. So you've got to have someone you trust that's going to encourage you, but that's going to hold you accountable. Just kick you right in the butt. Like, listen up.
Yeah, we all need that sometimes. We need to be kicked in the butt for sure. It makes me laugh. That makes me think of John's blog this morning. I just threw it in the comments. He talks about setting a balanced goal, and he has these goals that he came up with: the golden lollipop goal, the sour grape goal. I think it's kind of a fun way to talk about it. But yeah, like we do. It seems like funny that there's like a right or wrong way to set goals, but really, when it comes down to it, there are these proven methods that make it happen. So
result in greater success.
So if you liked tip number 3, put a 3 in the comments. I like our participation today, throwing up those 3s. I see Mr. Mark Nitschke is hanging out with us today. That's pretty special. John says sharing sometimes cuts both ways. Some people are not going to be supportive. You need to be prepared for negative feedback. Yeah, I agree. I think you've got to pick the right person to share that goal with, because some people, misery loves company, and they don't really want to grow or change, and they're gonna bring you down maybe, or tell you like, don't worry about it, you don't need to do anything.
Yeah, haters gonna hate. It's just how it is, roll with it.
Lily says, when obstacles arise, you can change your direction to reach your goal. You do not change your decision to get there. That's pretty awesome. Yeah, I think if you set a goal with that strong why, like you talked about with tip number 2, Erin, then you hopefully there's no like canceling the goal. And I know sometimes I like to run away from a goal when I'm feeling like I'm not getting there, and I like to be like, I don't want to do that anymore. And it's like, well, actually I do. It's just kind of harder than I thought, and I need to find a new way.
Yeah, be flexible in how you arrive at the goal. Like, be committed to what you want to accomplish, but be okay with if your plan doesn't go the way you thought it would in your head. That's just how it goes. We make a plan. It doesn't mean it's going to survive the implementation.
Totally. And with your clients, if they decide they want to jump off the train and they don't want to achieve their goal anymore, you can bring them back to that why and say, yes, I thought this was important to you. Is it not important to you anymore? And that's why it's good to have that deeper conversation with people, I think. So that is great. So that was tip number 3. No, what's tip number 4 or step number 4?
So step number 4 is crafting a timeline for yourself. And I think it's important when you have, maybe it is a long-term goal, you need to break that into smaller achievable steps. Yeah. Weight loss is obviously a huge goal for people that both need it and don't need it. It seems to be such a focus. It's like in our face all the time. And so if weight loss is somebody's goal and they set a lofty goal of, I want to lose, 50 pounds this month, perhaps not, maybe not, maybe don't do that because it's not healthy. Cut your goal in half, and start smaller so that you can achieve these steps. And then it's kind of an innate reward system along the way. And then it's that, oh yes, I'm making progress. Because as long as you're moving forward, that's still progress. It doesn't matter how slow it's going. It just has to be right for you. So you need to set a timeline, but be very flexible about that timeline. Because there are things that are going to throw you off. You're going to get sick, or a kid's going to get sick, or you're going to have a work crisis, or I don't know, like your roof's going to cave in. Whatever the case is, like, stuff happens that are outside of our control that threaten our progress every day. And if we stop to basically throw stones at everything that threatened us, we'd never get anywhere.
Yeah.
So just be flexible about your timeline and learn in some respects to roll with it. If it's something you can control, fix it. If it's not, move forward onto something that you can control. But be okay with if your timeline isn't, if you don't complete it by this time on this day and in this manner, you're really, if that's your focus, you're not going to be proud of the success that you've achieved.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I love the breaking it down just for the reason, like you said, so that you can have those little milestones or have those little accomplishments. Like, I remember when we were working towards getting back to more consistent sleep in our household, and it's like, I didn't sleep 9 hours last night, so we failed. And it's like, no, actually, you slept 30 minutes longer than the night before, or you didn't have to wake up as much. And yeah, it's like, if you don't have those smaller reminders or those smaller achievements, it's hard. Sometimes it's like, well, I didn't get there yet, or I didn't get what I wanted. So
yeah, it's not working.
Yeah, it's not working. Yeah, I love that, breaking it into smaller steps. And that's what personal trainers and health coaches can really help. Erin just stole my thunder about falling off the timeline. Great minds think alike.
I'm with you, John.
So funny. You keep my life funny. Thank goodness. So yeah, I don't take it too seriously. Awesome. So that was tip number 4, or step number 4. If you like step number 4, which is breaking it down, I know I liked it. Put a 4 into the comments for us, and then let's roll on to number 5. Erin, what's the final step?
So the final one is measurement. You have to find a way to measure your progress, and not just for the data that you can gather, and it's more for so you can see your progress. If you don't do that, you never really know, and you sit there and you wonder, I wonder if this is working. So create some sort of measurement tool. And I think within that measurement tool, you need to have a plan for overcoming setbacks. So there are certain things that we know will likely to derail us, but that doesn't mean that you fall off and then you can't get back on and keep moving forward. It just might push your timeline back a little bit. So as you think about how you're going to measure your progress, you need to be able to also determine, okay, so if I am faced with X, this particular setback or struggle or challenge, an obstacle, whatever the case is, this is how I'm going to handle it. So you kind of have sort of a preemptive approach to tackling certain obstacles. So, if you know that you're going to have to travel, and it's maybe going to throw off your new commitment to an exercise routine that you've established, work with your trainer, and vice versa. Trainers work with your clients to come up with routines that they can do on the road. So that's overcoming a challenge. No, it's not going to be the same as if it were in session, but don't have that expectation. You can't really recreate that if it's not in the same environment. It's not a controlled environment. So you have to be able to, again, be flexible. I think that's the underlying theme of all of this, is being flexible. Flexible in your manner, but I think inflexible in the goal that you want to achieve. Like, be committed to it.
Great.
Come in hot. That's what you're doing. So create a measurement tool. And then as you measure your progress, that gives you an opportunity to reflect. It gives you an opportunity to look back and go, oh, so this week went really, really well. What did I do in that week that was beneficial or advantageous to what I'm trying to achieve? And then if you have a rotten week, you can kind of look back and see the factors that may have contributed to that. So measurement is critical. And as personal trainers, fitness professionals, health coaches, and just general viewers, if you're not one of those professionals, think about how often we measure things. I mean, you have to be able to measure it objectively.
Yeah. Can I just say I love the way you say measure?
Why?
I say measure. I just love I love the way you say measure. It makes me want to measure even more.
Potato. I mean, I'm going to keep saying it now. Measure.
Oh, it's so great. It's like that Southern way. Anyway, sidebar, squirrel. So if you liked tip number 5, go ahead and throw a 5 in the comments. I'm going to bring up a couple comments. Actually, Erin, you're stimulating some conversation here.
Good.
It says, I like the comment of time not being so important, so long as there's progress being made. If we get focused on timelines, we get discouraged.
Yes. Right on. Yes, Irene, that's exactly the point.
Billy says, setting realistic goals is something I have to learn over the years after failing many times. I really like that, Billy, because I was just thinking about that. It's like, gosh, there's so many different ways to set goals. There's so much to know about it. And it's really a habit that you have to cultivate, and it takes time. And playing around with different ways to do it is, I think, key. Like, we're giving you a lot of tips today or ways to do it, but like maybe with you, it's kind of hard to figure out the why, or maybe it's too hard to write it down right now. Like, you don't need to do all these things, but perhaps just doing it a little differently this year and then seeing what happens. John says, I think you need to have fun. If your goal makes your life horrible, you will quit. This is very, very true.
Yeah. Like if, for example, like you think that you want to start running, but you hate running. Well, let's talk about that. Maybe don't start with the goal of I'm going to run a marathon.
Yeah.
Maybe start with a 5K and lead up, again, those small achievable goals. And it needs to be enjoyable. It needs to be fun. Life should be fun.
Yeah, there should be fun aspects to it for sure. And everybody's going to have a different ratio. But yeah, I agree. Like, that's where you got to really dig as a health coach, trainer, wellness coach, what have you. You've got to be able to say, okay, like, why do you want to run?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, because it's healthy, or because I want to get in shape. It's like, okay, bing, 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 you want to get in shape. There's lots of ways to get in shape. We don't necessarily need to run if running's going to make us miserable, or,
Yeah, absolutely.
Myra joined us and she's clicking some thumbs up. I even think of Myra as a sleep coach. Like, she has so many different ways to help families get the sleep they want. Like, there's everyone wants to sleep, right? But there's a lot of ways to get restful sleep. There's a lot of ways to make sure your family is rested. Like, she doesn't do it the same way with each person. Trainers don't get people to lose weight the same way or build muscle the same way.
No.
Yeah, there's lots of different ways to get to the same destination. It makes me think of a ski hill. I just can't help it looking out the window today and it's snowing. Like, there's so many ways to get back to the chairlift. You go down whichever path. So anyway, I'm going off on a side trail here, but I just threw up your blog in the comments, Erin. You wrote this great blog called Identify Personal Training Goals with Clients. And I want to point this blog out because it has an attachment in it to set goals. And Erin, boy, if you want to follow a step-by-step plan, like, today's show is probably a nice conversation. You're probably going to feel kind of motivated afterwards, but what you do after the show is what's really important. And if you need some accountability, I would go to this blog and download this worksheet and work through. She gives great examples in this blog and a whole grid on, she has this person, or she gives an example of losing weight. Anyway, go look at the blog if you need to follow up. And I see if you guys like number 5. That's awesome. Does anyone have any comments or questions, or does anyone want to share us their resolution or their goal? I know Billy said he wants to be more flexible in his body and physically and professionally. Billy, if you feel like sharing why, we'd love to know, like, why do you want to be more flexible? I would just be curious. And so if anyone else wants to share some of their resolutions, I think I just disappeared for a second, but I'm back.
I'm all, oh.
I know, I saw the look on your
my face. I guess we're done.
Oh, this mouse I have, it's the Apple mouse, and there's no, like, when I scroll, sometimes I scroll and then it like slides the screen over. So, but I use the mouse so that I don't have to have my hand up anyway.
Yeah.
Sidebar. Myra says, I want my strong core back. I lost it. A strong core. Ooh, so like stronger abs. Mm-hmm. I wonder, why you want to have a strong core. Like, what have you noticed is different, from not having it? I have so many questions. And then Billy says, I really like this quote. It motivates me. Review your goals twice every day in order to be focused on achieving them. That's a good idea. Yeah. Your goals where you can see them so you don't forget about them. Mark says, what type of data can you measure? It seems hard to find data that helps move your goals forward.
Why do you got to ask the tough questions, baby? That is a really good question. So it so depends on the goal. Like, if it's a physical goal, it's very easy to create assessments that are going to tell you the data that you need. Can this person you know, what's the 8 rep max look like? Is it higher than it was before? Did they lose inches around their waist? Like those types of goals or those types of measurements are really, they're so easy to follow because they're objective, they're black and white. You either lost weight or you didn't. But when it comes to other goals, so if you're, say if it's a learning goal or something like that, and you have a little objective, like you can create your own little assessments. Like I know Mark is actually trying to learn the Japanese alphabet right now. I know this because I bought him this book that is really cool that goes through like how you can, it connects like the shapes of the letters to different common things like animals or cats or, you know, something like that. And you can go through and give yourself a test. So can I really write the first 6 letters easily without struggle? You can measure it. You do have to be creative. And I think I tend to focus on measurement so much because I am an educator. And so assessment and progress is something that's just inherent to the fabric of my being. But I think it does depend on the goal for sure. Like, and I agree, it is hard. It is hard. So, you know, I think you need to identify what that goal is and create like, okay, ask yourself the question, how do I know I'm successful? How will I know I've been successful? Well, I'll know I've been successful if I can do these 3 things. And then if you know that you struggle with maybe the second and third, those are areas that maybe you need to focus on and go back and just brush up on, or, you know, add a little bit more focus to or practice. Does that help, Marcus?
Yeah, I mean,
yes,
if I think if you had an example, Mark, that'd be great. I think about Billy's goal because it's one of those, it's kind of like ones that I set where he's like, he wants to be more flexible professionally. And it's like, well, how do you know you're being more flexible professionally? Like I even think about one of my goals this year is to kind of like let go of negative emotions faster, or just like move on from things. Like don't let them eat me up all day. It's like,
right.
how do you measure that? And I feel like that's where hanging it up somewhere is really, I think, important. And then to recognize like, okay, today I still wasn't that flexible, but at least I realized it right afterwards. And then like you keep realizing it sooner and sooner until you realize it ahead of time, and then you start realizing it ahead of time that you need to be more flexible. Or you're in the middle of a conversation and you're like, I'm not being very flexible right now. And you're like, well, maybe I can shift. And I think that those ones can be hard, but like realizing like just realizing there's an issue is half the
I think you nailed it, because sometimes our goals are not super tangible, like weight loss, like improving physical or metabolic fitness. And so sometimes it's about that slight behavior change and really creating that level of awareness. So if you're somebody that maybe is like a hot button personality and you want to react right away and then you always regret it later, and say it's in an email. Okay, so maybe craft the first email and just delete it and then think about it. So it's kind of creating those tools along the way that's like, okay, kind of check-in points with yourself. Like, am I doing this right now? Am I doing this? You know, so in part, it's an awareness piece too, if it comes to like a behavior change or, you know, you trying to let go of, you know, certain daily stressors that create negativity. Sometimes it's really about creating those little tools for ourselves that we know are going to be those reminders.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a mantra, you know?
Yeah, mantra. Or I just feel like that's where writing it down and telling people comes in, because it's like when it's a goal that you can't always measure, it's like just write it down, maybe tell a couple friends, and then it's like you've made that proclamation. So it's like now even when you're talking to those friends, you feel like you've got to kind of display that. So that's great. Mark says yes, makes perfect sense. John wants to get to 10% body fat and 190 because he's going to be 56, and that would be rare to be at that. And thanks for sharing your goal, John. And Billy says physically because I'm old, laugh out loud. Professionally because over the years I've boxed off ways to grow just by sticking to the rules that were already set. So he just wants to maybe flow with a new way. That's great.
Wow, that's awesome. That's a great why right there, because Billy, you've already demonstrated in that statement right there that you already have a level of awareness that you are trying to continually bring to the surface.
Yeah, I feel like that's the first step always, is just acknowledging there's something you want to change, and then yeah, if you can sit down and make it a little more firm, like spend 45 minutes working on like, why is this important to me, and writing it down, and then telling someone, and finding a way to measure it, and then just going through those steps. So great. Well, we're getting close to the 40. Well, we're at the 40-minute mark. Well, I guess we started a couple minutes late. But anyway, do you have anything else you want to say, Erin, before we wrap up our New Year's session?
No, just that be forgiving of yourself. Be good to yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Life's going to do that enough. Other people are going to do that enough. Your experiences in life will challenge you. The last thing you need to be is your own roadblock. So just be forgiving. Find a mantra. Find something that motivates you or brings you back to your intention. Like, for example, one of the things I try to overcome or face is being scared of new opportunities or scared of new things. And as I was Christmas shopping downtown, I found this mug that says "Fortune favors the brave." And I'm like, that is such a good underlying theme for Chicken Little over here. So I have it it's sitting right here. And so I look at that anytime I feel just a little bit lacking in self-confidence or conviction or courage. And I'm like, right there, that's all I need to know. And so I'm going to move forward. It might not work out, but what if it does?
Yeah, that's great. Chicken Little.
Seriously.
Myra has a great question. Can you remind me, how do you get notified for the live show? Yeah, and Myra, I actually, not Erin, I scheduled the show for tomorrow by accident, so you may not have gotten the reminder appropriately. So I'm going to go and cancel that after this show. But anyway, I'm pretty sure, so usually within a day after the show, I schedule the next one. And if you go onto our page, NFPT's page, and you click the 3 little dots in the upper right-hand corner, it'll say turn on live notifications. And I think that it then will just automatically, it will let you know. And otherwise, every time we schedule a show, you can click those little calendar button, remind me when the show is. And you've got to go do that every single time, which could be tedious, but I'm pretty sure you can just like subscribe to a page's live shows, and I'm going to double check on that, and we'll share that next week. I'll go read a tutorial and make sure I understand. But thanks for asking that question, and thank you everybody for joining us today. I wish you luck with your goals. Mari says you guys are awesome.
Well, thank you.
That's great. If you have any suggestions for future topics, let us know. We've got some fun ones lined up for the month of February with the month of love. We've got some fun ones. But before January wraps up, next week, we're going to do what we call a video review. We're going to talk about this video. I'm going to put it in the comments real quick here. We're going to talk about Seth Godin's interview, because this interview is just fabulous. So let me put it in the comments. So watch this if you have time this week, and we're going to do like a little book club, but it's like a video club. So watch the video. You don't even have to watch it. You could just listen to it while you're practicing your flexibility, working on your core, or whatever. So listen to it. It is a little bit long, but it's worth the investment. And if you don't get time to watch it, we're going to talk about it next week. We're going to share some of our favorite tips. We would love you to join in. We're just trying to get people to like, hey, like, kind of like watch this video because we're going to talk about it, because we can all use someone to help us be accountable. And Seth is so brilliant in this video. Sure. Marie says Billy P is awesome too. Great.
We agree.
Sharing the love. We agree. Sweet. Well, click that video. Watch it sometime this week. We'll see you guys next week on Wednesday. We are not planning on changing the show time or day for a while here. So Wednesdays, 10 a.m. in the mountains, 9 a.m. on the California coast, and noon on the East Coast. So thanks for being here today, and Happy New Year, everybody. We'll see you next week.